the million dollar question, right? The main thing is for me understanding that it's not meant to be easy, right? And there's going to need to be an element of sacrifice. If you think you're going to work your job, come home, chill out, spend good family time, and then still have heaps of time to do a business and you're all relaxed, it's not going to happen. Understand that, life and business happens in seasons, and if you want to change where you're at now, there needs to be a period of imbalance. It's just the only way to look at it.
One thing that we've created over the last couple of months is our 3P formula. And essentially what that is
we don't need to overcomplicate it. E-commerce isn't that complicated. It really comes down to two things. How can we get as many people to the website as possible for as cheap as possible? And once they're there, how do we convert as many of them as possible? So you've proven product market fit. People want to buy your products. Get a good website that converts. Now that'll be a process of testing and learning. Find a good web dev that has experience working with e-commerce brands, and organic and paid ads. Content for both of those. Those are your two major channels at the start.
you spend a month just really diving deep into AI and the capabilities. You will save yourself so much time.
Top 3 things that you use like AI for. Like, what's 3 things that you've used it for that you're like, that's funny?
So,
all right, guys, welcome back to another episode. We're doing something a little bit different this time. You would have seen, for all of you guys that follow me in the podcast on Instagram, did a little Q&A question box yesterday. So we got a bunch of your questions come in. We're going to ask them, knowing what you guys are like and what our audience is really interested in. Most of them are e-commerce and business related questions about building a brand and that journey. So really excited. There's a lot of good questions. We couldn't get through all of them, but we picked the ones that I think are going to be as relevant and as valuable for as many of you as possible. And before we get into that, just wanted to do a little bit of an update about what we've been working on, mainly due to the fact that I know we've been very consistent. We've had the podcast for nearly 3 years, very consistently putting out a podcast every week. This year, 2025, has been a little bit different. It's been a little bit of a challenge. First of all, I had a couple of weeks in Japan, which threw a little bit of a spanner in the works, and I've got some big projects that we've been working on that have demanded more and more of my time, which has made it a little bit tricky. I apologize for all our OGs that have been listening for years, and I always get the messages on a Tuesday, Wednesday morning, hey, where's the pod, where's the pod, where's the pod? I'm sorry, we'll be back to doing weekly podcasts soon, hopefully in the next week or two. So I'll do a little bit of an update about what we've been working on. I haven't really been sharing much about what I've been building, and I do get a lot of questions about that, so we'll share a little bit of an update. But just on the podcast as well, with something we're thinking of doing in the next couple of months, I'd love to hear your thoughts, is I'm thinking of rebranding the podcast. It'll be very similar format and guests and structure, but just the name Life, Money and Love doesn't really resonate with me. Every time, so often when we talk to a guest, what's the podcast called? Oh, yeah, Life, Love and Money, or people just always mix up the order of the words. So it's something we thought about doing for a little bit. The podcast structure, as I said, won't change very much. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you follow us, message me or message the podcast on Instagram. Do you understand where I'm coming from? Do you love the name? Do you hate the name? Would you not change it? Or do you think you kind of see where I'm coming from in terms of why we want to change it? And then another thing on the podcast as well, why we haven't, we could have easily, Joe, rushed out podcasts. We get people pitching themselves every single day, like several people a day. We get pitching themselves and PR agencies pitching all their brands. And just where the podcast has grown to and the quality of guests that we've had consistently over I'd say the last 12 months, we have a pretty high standards for the quality of the guests and the quality of the conversations and the content that we produce. So I'd rather, maintain those standards and not rush podcasts out. So does that mean we get everything perfect and we don't make any mistakes? No, it doesn't. But I still think we provide a good quality all around. And I think you guys appreciate that. So thank you for everyone for continuing to listen. And for the people wondering, is this going to go back to podcasts every single week? Yes, it will. I'm trying to get there as soon as we can. But yeah, it's a little bit tricky with everything I've got going on, and I have prioritized the podcast for a lot, and other businesses and projects do demand my time. So on that, another question I get asked quite a bit. So what's going on with Happy Skin Co? Do you still own this? Yes, I still own Happy Skin Co. I know I don't talk about this as much, and the main reason is I don't spend as much of my time working on Happy Skin Co as I used to, probably maybe operationally in the actual business, a day a week. Obviously, I work from the Happy Skin Co office, but the business is pretty self-sufficient. The team run the day-to-day. I'm mainly in there at an approval level or to drive forward, some of our big deals, like with retailers and issues with that come with being in retail and growing in that world, predominantly in the US. So most of Happy Skin Co's focus has been and will be for the next year in growing those channels in the US. But for me, that's why I don't talk about it too much. I don't work in the day-to-day of it too much anymore. But yes, absolutely still own it. And I'm very excited about some of the things we have in the works. If you're particularly in the US, stay tuned. There could be some really exciting things happening mid-year or mid to late year in the US that we're excited about. But again, can't talk about that until the time comes. Last little update before we jump into your questions. Viral Brand Builder, as you guys know, I mentioned it here on the podcast. We don't really do any advertising for it. So it's been quite an exclusive group. I maybe post an intake once a quarter, once every 3 or 4 months to do an intake, and we mention it here. And that's really it. So what we've been doing with Viral Brand Builder, and maybe Joe can go into a little bit more detail as well. We've probably spent the last 6 months spending a lot of time and effort restructuring the entire program, refining everything, changing the way we facilitate the mentoring, creating all the new tools and assets that our brands work from. So it's been a lot of work in that. It's really rewarding work, and seeing the results of so many of our brands, people doing 6 figures in the first, like 6-figure months in their first few months. A lot of people getting up to the stage of getting close to being a $1 million brand. There's a few people that are coming up close to that stage. So it's really exciting working with so many new people that are excited about Ecom. And for other people, I just talked about, doing 6 figures a month. The excitement on people's faces doing their first $1,000 day, or getting their first 10 sales, or doing their first 10K per month. That's just as rewarding and exciting. So been a little bit quiet on that front. Haven't been talking too much about that because everything's restructuring. It's going to be coming out soon. We've put a lot of work into that. One thing I will say, I get a lot of people messaging me all the time. Hey, can I apply for this? Can I do some mentorship with you? I haven't done an intake this year. As I said, we keep it pretty exclusive. I'll be doing another intake this month, so the month of March. So something I'd highly suggest, if you've got an ecom brand that you've just started and you realize, hey, I need a plan, I really need help scaling this and growing this into a sustainably profitable business, or you listen to the podcast and you've been thinking, I've wanted to start my own business for ages and I've never really known where to start. Follow me and the podcast page, or make sure it's on both. I will put up a story in the next couple of weeks and do an intake for March. So if you're keen, follow us and keep your eye out. That'll definitely happen. I like to do one about once a quarter, and I haven't done one this year at all. So definitely want to get one up in March. And another little secret project that we've been working on. Very excited about, very bullish about this one. I won't go into detail about what it is yet, because I think there's a question about this coming up soon. So I can't reveal too much, but share a little bit more about that when we get to it. So now I think that's it for a little bit of an update. Joe, did you have anything else to add about anything you've been very busy with all the Ecom stuff for Viral Brand Builder behind the scenes? Is there anything else you wanted to share?
Yeah, no, I think you covered most of it. There's a lot in the works. Really excited to share it with everyone. Game changing stuff. So let's get into the questions. And yeah,
sorry to cut you off, bro. For those who don't know Joe, a lot of you would know Joe. Joe's the producer of the podcast. We do have other people in our production team from time to time, but from the start, he's been the producer. But really what Joe is, he's like my right-hand man when it comes to all things e-commerce. He's like, I refer to him very, very lovingly. He's like my e-com nerd. And I say this to some of our brands and they laugh, but I don't say that with any disrespect. I say that because you really need these people that live and breathe e-com and digital marketing and AI and all these things. So Joey's a massive asset, and he's been spending a lot of time on some of these changes with me as well. So excited to share all that with all our brands and potentially some of you who are keen as well over the next couple of months. But yeah, let's get into it, Joe.
Cool. Alrighty. So first question comes from Christian. I've wanted to start an ecom brand for years, but how do you know what product to sell?
Yeah, this would be probably one of the most commonly asked questions I get, or when people apply for mentoring and they're at that stage that they don't already have a brand. What do I sell? How do I know what to look for? And it is a really important question. I think a lot of people get it wrong. And if you get this part wrong of selecting the right product, it's going to be very difficult, if not impossible, to ever build a successful brand or make any sort of life-changing money. So a lot of people just wing it. They'll see a product or they'll see a brand and they'll just say, oh, I'm just going to copy that. But we do have a process. Like, it's something we've been working on actually documenting the last week. So what I'll do, this is something that if you guys are interested in, I'll actually be able to send this to you. Not yet. We can probably share this with you in the next month or two. But what I'll do, we've actually got 10-point criteria that make up like the best like product gold mine, like the winning product formula that you can work with. You tick these 10 boxes. Not every single product will tick all of them, but you tick as many of these as you can, and it's going to really put you in a really strong position. So what I'll do for you, Christian, and I know a lot of people that are listening to this that don't already have a business, this is like, write notes about this. If you want an actual document that explains everything in a lot more detail, reach out. This is one step of our 3-step product research formula. But so what do we actually look for in a good product? Now, number one, I'm not going to go into detail with all of these. Reach out if you want the document. We'll put you on our list and we'll send it to you. So number one, this was a pretty obvious one, but some products definitely don't tick this box, is it needs to solve a clear problem that people are experiencing today, right? So number one, it should solve a clear problem, address a specific pain point that a customer experiences regularly, and it creates an emotional response in making them like so keen to, buy a solution to this. That's essentially what you're doing. You create a product, you're creating a solution to your customers' problems. Number two and three kind of go together, but number two is proven market demand. Now, are there any sort of competitors that are selling the same product or a similar product that are out there? Now, obviously it's great to be absolute first mover and have that advantage, but that is so rare. And a lot of the time, if there's no one selling it, it means it's not a great product. For Happy Skin Co., everyone thinks we invented the technology. We didn't invent the technology. There are other brands. We were the first ones to really do it well online. But is there proven market demand? And there's a lot of ways you can research that. But essentially, for those that are just getting started, are there brands that have been selling profitably? And there's ways to tell if they've been running profitably. We never, of course, know. But one really easy example is there's a brand that launched maybe selling a similar product in the last year sometime, and they've been you go on their Facebook ads library, you look at page transparency and the ads they're running. If they've got ads there that they've been consistently running for 3 months plus, they're probably running them profitably. That'd be really stupid to have ads on for several months if they weren't running profitably. So that's a really good way to see just are their brands selling similar products, which brings us into number three, without it being oversaturated. Now, a really good way to tell if product's oversaturated, and I was just looking at some product research this morning. If you can go into Kmart, Walmart, Officeworks, Target, these sorts of mass-produced products places, and they sell their no brand or their clean branded version of that product, turn away. The product is oversaturated. Another good way, if those main competitors that you've looked at have been running for 3 years plus, I would say there's a good chance that the market has been saturated. And what we want to do in that is look for, when we are going into, it might be a competitive industry like skincare. To give an example of a podcast we did with Davey Rooney, skincare is a massively saturated market. Everyone knows that. Everyone already uses skincare. But what they did is look for an underserviced market. Davey created a skincare brand that targeted specifically combination skin. So a specific niche within a bigger market. If you can identify that, it's a real recipe for success. Number four, which is really important. Again, one of the most commonly asked questions we get: how do I know what to sell my product for? So essentially, the minimum margin that you want to be aiming for in gross profit is 60%. And now there are some slightly different variations of gross profit and what that means. What I'm talking about for gross profit is, of course, your product cost that you're going to get from your manufacturer on a per unit basis. Any packaging, whether it be the product packaging, the shipping packaging, anything to do with the product, the shipping from either your manufacturer to your 3PL or your manufacturer to your office, your warehouse, your home, as well as the cost to ship it to the customer. So I'm talking about all the product costs from you to your customer, minimum 60%, and that's including the shipping, because that's a really big variable. We like to include that because some products are cheap to ship, some are really expensive. Absolute minimum 60% gross margin, including shipping to your customer. And I say that as a minimum. I'm not saying every single brand should aim for that. I think a lot of brands are doing 70 to 80%. If you can get that margin and still be in a competitive price point, definitely aim for higher. But with some products, and we have a lot of like repeat purchase products where you might not necessarily have as much gross margin on a per order level, still look for a minimum of 60%. But if you can get that above 70% gross margin, you're going to be doing really well. Next one is number 5 is something that, particularly over the last, I've been in Ecom now for 7 years. You see a lot of like fad products pop up that, maybe the old school drop shippers made a bit of money on for a month, for 2 months, for 3 months. But we want to look at evergreen products, not these fads that are going to die. You really want to be going after something that there is a defined group of passionate buyers, making it easier for you to create marketing and sell to them. And again, if you can have that specific niche appeal, like, again, to refer to Davey's example as well, because we just had that podcast and it's fresh in my mind. If you can deliver your product to a specific niche group within a larger group, and they're really passionate people that you can talk about. Another one, specific niche appeal. A couple episodes before we had mycavoodle.com.au. Again, the pet niche is massive, but she created a product going directly after cavoodles. Other dogs can use it. She gifted us some as well. And I said, "Well, can I use this? My dog's a golden retriever." She's like, "Yes, of course." So specific niche appeal within an evergreen product niche. If you want to look for what to look for in a product. Last four, I'll move through these quickly. I'm spending a little bit more time on these than I wanted to. As I said, if you want this document with a lot more detail than I'm able to share with you guys here, send us a message. Joe will put you on the list. He'll email it to you as soon as we can share it. 6, again, for anyone in ecom, easy content creation. Content, whether it be for organic or paid, is the lifeblood of any ecom marketing. So can content be easily created? And to do that, can it be easily shipped around to content creators as well? Simple sourcing, number 7. Again, I had a call today with a couple of founders that were looking at, starting a new brand, and they have a range of different products we were considering. One thing that I recommend for 99% of beginners is simple sourcing. So can you source the product easily from somewhere like China, from a platform like Alibaba at a reasonable cost? For most of you starting out for your first or second business, that's the model I'd recommend. Yes, you can, create custom products, whether it be supplements or skincare, where you're sourcing ingredients from here and some from another place and some from another country. Then it's shipped to manufacturing, your packaging's from here and it's shipped to there. It complicates the whole thing, adds a lot of extra costs. While it can be a really good business model, if you're a beginner and it's your first business, I would source something really simply from China where you can get the packaging all sorted with this from the same place. So you're not having to even go and order 2,000 units of packaging for 200 units of product and holding it there. I think simple sourcing, straight from China. Ideally, if you can, most businesses are going to be from China, and let's not overcomplicate it for you beginners that are looking for that first product. And if you're second or third business, obviously you should by this stage have a better understanding of logistics and forecasting and stock control. But for anyone getting started out, easy, simple sourcing will make your life so much easier. Another one, upsell potential. So looking for products that we can build a brand around. We don't want to just be a one-off product with nothing that we can build around. Is there anything that we can upsell with, cross-sell with? Is there any supplementary products that we can add in that we can one-click purchase, post-purchase to upsell them? There's a lot of different options, and start thinking about that early on. This is one of the boxes that is easier to tick, but start thinking, and this you sort of do this for yourself when you're picking one of those evergreen niche products that isn't going to be a fad, but you really want to think about what can my product range look like over the next 12 months? What can I sell with the product to increase my cart size? Because the beauty of that, if you can increase your cart size, even if it's a product that adds 10%, 20%, 30% extra revenue, that generally isn't going to increase your cost per acquisition. You're going to be paying the same cost per acquisition. The customer's already there. You're advertising around your hero product. And then all of a sudden, you're selling them a product that's going to cost them an extra $30 as an example, but that's cost you $3, $4, $5 in product costs. So all of a sudden, you've generated an extra $30 in revenue, which is really important as you look to scale. But more importantly, you've created an extra $25 to $27 of gross margin, which is really important. Next one, again, not every business will tick this box from the start. Happy Skin Co didn't. We still did amazingly well, but looking for repeat purchase potential. Now, obviously, the consumables come to mind. While that's a really good business model to have something that needs fulfillment every month or every 2 months, generally those sorts of products are cheaper, so there are pros and cons to each. You might not have as high of an average order value or be as profitable off your first sale. But what I would do, and this is what I do with any future brands that I think about, is if you find a really good hero product that is more of a once-off purchase, think of a Happy Skin Co. You buy it, it lasts you for years and years and years. What other supplementary products that fit in with that world can I introduce that will have a consumable element so you can encourage repeat purchases and you're not always in acquisition mode? That's one of the weaknesses, full disclosure, of the Happy Skin Co business model is, while we do have great margins and we have great product and it does really well, once you sell a product to someone, you don't really need to sell to them again. Like that's the beauty of delivering a really good quality product. They don't need to purchase another one in a year's time. So something to consider, whether it's a hero product or immediately what you pivot into or add in additionally. And the last one, again, for this is minimal SKUs. You don't want to be starting a product with 7 different flavors or 20 different sizes or any of that when it's your first business. Keep it simple. A lot of people want to start something in fashion or clothing or footwear, whatever it may be. While those businesses can be great, they are a lot harder at the beginning. There's a lot more to manage. And you, at the start of your ecom journey, you want to be focusing on the things that really drive the needle forward and sell for you. And that's not managing stock and doing stock takes and stressing out about how much to order of each size. It's going to be getting your website ready, getting content created, continually testing ads, testing and learning. Those are the best things you can be spending your time on. More of the marketing function. Definitely don't want to get too caught up in the stock management part. So minimal SKUs. It's probably the longest I'll speak on any of the individual questions. But again, I thought I'd go into a little bit more detail because if you get that part wrong, it's going to be very difficult to succeed. If you want that document, which goes into a lot more detail than I just did, then send us a message on the Life Money and Love Instagram page. Joe will grab your details and email it out.
Next question comes from Jace. He asked, would you ever start another brand? If so, what niche or category would it be in?
So this is what I was alluding to in that secret project. Yes, I am starting another brand. Doing it very different to Happy Skin Co. I've had so many opportunities to start brands and be involved with brands, and some I've said yes to, some I've said no to in the past, and I've never really got to the point where it made enough sense to follow through with. But this is a brand that I'm working that I am extremely excited about. As I said, I'm really bullish on the product, the niche, the opportunity, and the team we've built. It's not just me. There will be 3 other co-founders, Joe being one of them. A couple of people that, you'll definitely know at least one of them. We'll share more about that as we get closer. But in terms of the niche or the industry I'd be in, I won't reveal the specific niche it's in yet. But one thing I would say that I'd never do again, I'd never I'd never start a product in an industry or a niche that I wasn't truly passionate about myself. I'd never sell a product that I wouldn't buy myself and use myself. So Happy Skin Co, obviously, like laser hair removal isn't a product that I use very frequently myself. So I wouldn't do something like that again. I'd do something I'm genuinely passionate about. We all know how important like founder-led content is as well. Would me being on the Happy Skin Co Instagram every day make sense? Not a whole lot. Would it make sense with the new brand? Potentially would. So yeah, that's all I'll say about that. Something that I would genuinely use myself. That's not to say for all of you listening, starting your first brand, that's the best way to approach it. If it does tick the boxes that we went through and you're weighing it up between 2 products, one you would love and use yourself, the other one you see as a good opportunity, always pick the one that you would love and use yourself. But obviously this isn't my first business. So yeah, but I do think the product ticks a lot of boxes, and not just the first product, but the collection we've got built out. Yep. So in the future planning. So that'll be exciting. You guys will hear a lot more about that over the next couple of months as we get close to launch, and hoping for some sort of a mid-year launch. Don't have the exact date, but we're working pretty hard on it.
Yeah. Got some logos back and
they're
looking pretty good.
We've got some logos back. You've got like a few different concepts and branding colors back. So it was really cool. We had a meeting with the four founders. And people might seem 4 like, whoa, that's crazy. It's I think when you know what you're looking for in co-founders, it's really like 2 and 2. So like me and Joe, and then 2 other people who are very closely related. But we've all got very different strengths and skill sets and we all work really well together. I think we're all very we're mature. We've been through life a bit. We've been through business. We understand it. So I'm excited. But yeah, do you have anything else to add? I know you do quite a lot of research around product as well, around the way you base product selection and what to look for.
When we're first launching brands, of course, Meta is going to drive a lot of the sales as well as our like organic content. And one thing that we've created over the last couple of months is our 3P formula. And essentially what that is one persona, you're fixing one problem, and you're providing one promise. Like that's essentially it in its simplest form.
Really simple starting place. Yeah. Get really clear on, do that really well. And then obviously there's going to be multiple customer personas that come later. But if you try and be everything to everyone, right, you're going to be lost in the sea of a million brands that are being launched. So have a real strong point of view and focus on those 3 things. Yeah.
When you're launching, you want to think about it from like the opposite, and you're reverse engineering it. So it's like, okay, because people launch a product and then try and find someone that would like that product. You got to think about it the other way. Like, who are those people? Find those people first, and then find a product for them. And that works really well.
And like a lot of people will rely on Facebook to tell them who the customers are, and that's fine if you've got a lot of money to burn and you're like, let me just like create heaps of content targeting 5-6 different customer avatars and see you respond. That's good. And like maybe someone like myself would be in a position to do that. Obviously, I'd be more strategic around that around launch. But for anyone starting, your advertising dollars and your time is really, really important. You need to get the best bang for your buck as you can. So getting really clear on that before you launch. Obviously, there'll be other things that we test, but starting from a really strong, clear space, knowing who you're talking to, let's go after them. If we can convert the people who we think will be our main demographic first, then we can start to expand into other groups. But no, I like it.
All right. So the next question comes from Sam. What is a healthy gross margin to aim for when in e-commerce?
Really good question. Again, there was probably 3 or 4 different people who asked the same question. We did cover it just before in that product criteria, that winning product framework that we went through. But yeah, so we base it off, and there is a range, but we base it off as a minimum 60% gross margin. Remember, that's including your product or your packaging, the shipping from your manufacturer to you or your 3PL. We even include like our transaction fees in that, and then the shipping to your customer. If you don't include the shipping to your customer, obviously that number increases, but then it's like there's such a variance in shipping. We get people to factor that in from the start, so you know you'll have the margin. 60 is the minimum, but if you can get that between 70 and 80 or around that 70 mark, it's going to be even better for you. The more margin you have, the more room for error you have, and the more easily you'll be able to scale profitably. So 60% is the minimum, including all those things. But if you can get it up towards 70 or even higher, it's going to be better for you.
So the next question comes from Awoke Living, and they asked, any tips for startups that can be implemented right away?
Yeah, this is a really good question. Again, it is quite general. It will depend like where you're up to, what your brand is. But I think like where I'd want to go with this, because I think it's relevant for any startup, anyone at any stage, not just startup, but I think the sooner you can learn this lesson, the better. Business, when you're in e-commerce, whether you're full-time and if you have the privilege to be working on your business full-time, that's great. This is equally as important for you. But particularly for people just starting out, you're balancing full-time work or part-time work, family life, training, yourself, your mental health, and the business. We all feel very time poor. I've never spoken to anyone that's got a business that's a startup, got a business that's doing absolutely killing it. It's like, how have you been? Oh, mate, I've got so much free time. Everyone's busy, right? So we have to get used to that. And with e-commerce, and people at all stages will be able to relate to this, you're never going to have a zero things on your to-do list. Your to-do list never ends. If you think there's nothing for you to do and you're in e-commerce, just don't understand what you're doing or what you could be doing to improve your business, attract new customers. There's just a million different things or different touch points you could be improving for your customers. So what I would say is like at this position when you're a new startup brand, understand what's most important to your business and what, if you can put 1 hour of your time in, what's going to give you the biggest return on your investment in terms of growing the business, selling more product, because those are the things that matter at the beginning. So I think like really understanding and refining time management and prioritization. I know it's a bit cliche and you'll hear it in business books. It's been said for the last, however many decades, but it really is so important in e-commerce in a world where there's a million things you could be doing or trying. So if you're in the early stages, like I just think like, let's keep the most important things, most important things. Like make sure your product's in stock so we can sell it. And then really what I'd be spending my time on is content for organic, content for paid ads, making sure our website's converting as well as possible. And just in those couple of things there, in the content for paid, organic, and website, I mean, in the content space, that's, I think, where every founder should be really spending most of their time finding what works, what structure works for paid ads, what structure works for organic content, what's our method into this, and just work on the most important things first that are going to make the most sales or grow the business first, and then get to the little issues and other things that build up. And don't be scared to take longer to get back to someone or do another little task. If it's not as important as the most important thing that you should be doing, do all those things first, get back to that later. If you do that every day, in a year, you're going to be so much further ahead than just chasing your tail, chasing your tail, chasing your tail. It's a skill that I'm still learning, that's taken me years to learn, but spending your time on the most important task. But you work with heaps of startup founders as well. What would you be implementing or focusing your time in at the start of that journey? I think another thing for someone new that you've gone really deep on is like, if you're brand new and you haven't launched yet, take an extra month, don't launch, and fucking learn AI.
So AI is a big one. I'll come back to that.
Yeah.
But one thing that I've implemented, so I read the book, The One Thing. Have you read it?
I haven't read it.
Essentially, it like the title, like it's just keep the one thing, the one thing. But one thing that he talks about in the book is like your focus block. So he's really big. It's like a 4 hour. He talks about 4 hours as this focus block. So essentially what I used to do is I'd get up, train in the morning, and then go about my day. I'd then be stuck in traffic, and there'd be a lot of other things. I've now shifted my day. I use this focus block. For me, I just do 3 hours. So I'll get up early, do the 3 hours, and then I'll go and train. And in those 3 hours is the most important task that I'm getting done. By the time I get to the office, I've done majority of things. And then the afternoons is more about like meetings and a different type of work. So that's been a practical thing that I've implemented that's worked really well. Back onto the AI point. Yeah, AI is, I read it somewhere, I heard it somewhere on a podcast, but like essentially what they're saying is like the dumbest AI you'll use is today. Like it gets better every single day and it improves every single day. that when even we were trying to set up different flows and different GPTs maybe 6 months ago for the podcast, a lot of things it couldn't do because it just didn't have the capabilities. Where now it's come such a long way that we use it for a lot of things.
The exponential growth with AI is unlike anything we've ever seen before. And think about how fast technology's already changed the last 10, 15, 20 years. AI shits all over that.
Yeah.
It's not even close.
Yeah. But even like for everything, like the creative stuff, it works really well. And like like you said, if you spend a month just like really diving deep into AI and the capabilities, you will save yourself so much time, so many learnings because it really has like it improves our workflow.
What's like your top 3 things that you use like AI for?
So 2 things that we've been using quite a lot has been one, Fathom Note Taker, which it uses AI. Essentially all our Google Meets. So every time we're having a meeting, Fathom, completely free app. It'll record the meeting. It then summarizes everything, sends it to your email, summarizes everything. And then each summary point you can then click on and then it goes to that point in the meeting. So that's been fantastic. The other thing as well that we've been using.
Yeah, and just for me, like no one, like everyone has had that like Firefly's AI note taker for years.
Oh, this
like,
is way better than Firefly.
To just like, I'm not going to just read through everything we discussed on the meeting, but it literally like summarizes it into points and action steps. So it's like, fuck, it's like having an assistant take notes, say what you need to do next. What was the most important parts? Now, are they always perfect? No, they're not, but they're getting better and better. So it's like, if you didn't have time to fucking read through that and you didn't have money for an assistant, do this. It'll make your life so much easier.
Another thing on AI, we've been testing AI UGC is going to be the next thing. Like instead of paying creators, hundreds of dollars, you can get UGC creators. Now, it works really well when you're chopping between it. You can't really just run it as a straight UGC talking to camera because you can tell. But when you're using it as sort of like sections within the ads, that's working really well. We've been testing that quite a bit, and we're going to continue testing that because that saves so much time and so much money as well.
Would you be worried if you're a full-time UGC content creator?
No, because it's really hard to have product in there. So like it's great as a supplementary thing to let's say you could create a different hook and then launch a new ad, a new ad with a hook, but it's not going to be able to be hands-on with the product and things like that.
And like even the humans that do create content, the good ones have a community, have a personality, have a vibe. So yeah, but it will mean you have to probably lift your game.
The next question comes from Vanessa, and she said, how to stay motivated and balance life between working full-time, family, and side hustle.
The $1 million question, right?
Yep.
The answer to this one, is it Vanessa? Yeah, Vanessa.
Yeah.
Like there's no silver bullet that I can tell you that's going to be like, yep, just do this and you'll be balanced. I think every entrepreneur, if they're making their first 100 or the first 100 million, we all struggle from this from time to time. But I think the main thing is for me understanding that it's not meant to be easy, right? And there's going to need to be an element of sacrifice. If you think you're going to work your job, come home, chill out, spend good family time, and then still have heaps of time to do a business and you're all relaxed, it's not going to happen. Understand that, life and business happens in seasons. And if you want to change where you're at now, there needs to be a period of imbalance. It's just the only way to look at it. You need to sacrifice something, whether it be personal time, family time. Obviously, the family, in my opinion, should always be like a core around what you do. But if you're thinking about, okay, what life do I want to give my family over the next 5-10 years, weigh that up with the cost of changing your life and changing your financial status as well. And I just think listen to your body. I've experienced burnout once or twice. It isn't nice. But also if you didn't work hard, you're not going to get to where you want to be. Some people say, oh, but I work smart. But what if you work smart and you work hard? I just think prioritization, know what, when you are working, you're working on the most important things. And then just understand that it's not meant to be easy. It isn't easy. You're not going to be in full balance. And if you decide, well, I don't want to do it, well, then ask yourself, how badly do you want your goals? And so many people have massive goals that they talk about, but are you willing to pay the price that it'll take to live that life? And ask yourself that honestly. This isn't directly to you, Vanessa. I've seen people talking about this and struggle with this a lot. So really think about how bad do you want it? What's it going to cost to get you there? It's not going to be easy. Are you okay with it? It's not going to be easy. Are you willing to put in the work to live that life? And if you are, good, get used to it. I don't love every part of every day. No entrepreneur does. You deal with a lot of shit in our world. but the control over your own life and the benefits massively outweigh it for me. But you need to understand if the pros and cons of being in business and creating your own life is worth it for you. So yeah, if I could tell you how to live a perfect balanced life, I'd be a billionaire by now because I'd tell everyone. But unfortunately, it's all fluid.
All right, next question comes from Sarah, and she said, from a TikTok perspective, how to grow organically, and does the algorithm reward you for certain?
Yeah, this is another one that it's hard to be specific with because there's loads of different ways to succeed on TikTok with lots of different people who have different formats, different products, whether you're a business, whether you're a creator. There isn't one way that I can say. One thing that I think is really important that most people struggle with, because I have the conversations all the time, whether it's people applying for mentoring or if it's people that I'm actually mentoring, and they say, but Dylan, I don't want to put my face. I don't want to put my face to the brand. I don't want to create content. That's fine. You don't have to do it like that. There are other brands that succeed without their founder's face being involved. But if you look at the podcast we've had on and all the guests, so many of the ones that come to mind, Rachel from TBH is all over their content. Davey from Boring Without You is all over his content. Anita from Hero Products all over theirs. Like, it's just a massive hack for you. It's a massive cheat. If you can master the act of creating good content and the founders being involved in that, it's going to position you a lot stronger. So what I would say, there are plenty of people that are succeeding out there. Go find your favorite 5, favorite 10. Look at the way they do it. Try and identify what they're doing well and why they're getting cut through and you're not. And my biggest point about this, and it can come across quite harsh to some people, is you'll see people message me. I'll get people message me, not even that I'm mentoring. Hey, Dylan, I've heard you talk many times on the podcast about organic content being important. I've tried it for a month and it's not working. It doesn't work. And then you go have a quick look at their page and it's like not really great content. And I think the most important thing here is like having that like ruthless self-awareness and the ability to tell yourself, yes, I've posted once a day for a month, but is it really good content? Like, look at the people that are killing it and compare it to yours. Do you think they're at the same level? I think something that's really important is like, with TikTok in particular, people have over the last couple of years talk about quantity over quality. I've kind of pushed back at that from the start. I think earlier in TikTok, quantity, you did get a big advantage just having a lot of quantity. I think now that there's a lot more creators there and it's sort of matured a bit, quality should be the first and foremost. If you can't put out one good video, don't put out 10 shit ones. I would tell people to go listen to the conversation we just did with Davey Rooney. Yeah. There's a part probably 3/4 or so in where he breaks down his strategy. Pre-preparation for your TikToks is really important. The best creators don't just start filming and randomly they've got this amazing structure that hooks people in and keeps them watching, which is what you need to do to succeed. It's pre-planned and it's pre-thought out. So what's your hook? What are some visual cues that I can be doing to keep people listening? Davey said a really interesting, he'll have a hook, he'll have some visual cues, he'll start explaining it. Then about 15 seconds in, he'll do another hook that he'll pay off at the end to make sure they watch the whole video. So structurally analyze the flow of your videos. Make sure the hook is going to be the most important part. And just play around with it, try different things, but really don't just throw shit at the wall and hope it sticks and just, I've done a different style of video. Analyze the different parts, look at the best creators, what they're doing, and just get better every month. It took Davey several months before he got good at it. And once he got good at it, grew his Instagram to like over 200,000 in the space of like 3 or 4 months. So you can get there. Like Davey, who's killing it now, wasn't necessarily great at it from the start. Find out your method, pre-preparation. Don't just film 30 videos and post them in a month and say, I've done TikTok. That's not doing TikTok. You got to be good at it if you want to get good results. So how do you get better? Just, that's the way I'd sort of approach it. But do you have anything to add with that?
When you're modeling content from other people, like look at it, look at what they're doing, look at the elements and like really break it down and then go, okay, and try and like you have an assumption, you have a hypothesis of why it did well and then test that out. Like test what they've done, but in your own unique way. Don't copy, people post stuff word for word like that. Obviously don't be doing that stuff. You're not going to get anywhere with that. But yeah, just look at the best creators and just model. Like that's what the biggest content creators are all doing that and they're all copying each other, right? So you can obviously be doing that on a smaller scale. But yeah, I've definitely changed my opinion and my viewpoint on that. When we first started, I was much more of the opinion of like, let's just put a bunch out. It definitely doesn't work. You might get You might get a few that sort of pop off here and there, but they're not really, if they're not a really good piece of content, it's either getting the wrong type of audience or you're just getting a lot of vanity metrics and not moving either the business, the podcast, whatever it may be forward.
Yeah.
That would sort of be the main two things that I would say on that.
Cool.
All right. The next question comes from Lisa. She said, we're a baby goods business that sells mainly B2B, but we want to sell D2C. What should we do?
So that's a really good question. I think if you've got an established like B2B business, you've done a really good step and you've proven product to market fit. We know people are interested in buying your product. So now it's just the method in which they do that. You're going to have much better margins if you're selling through your own website. The rise of e-commerce, as you've seen over the last 5 years since COVID, it's exploded. It's only going to get more and more prevalent. I don't think e-commerce is going anywhere. People say, oh my God, I've missed the e-commerce boom. No, it's still in its infancy. As the world grows and more people shop online, it's only going to get bigger and bigger. So don't do anything to disrupt what you're doing with your current partners. I think definitely if that's what's bringing in the money and paying the bills, it's not disrupt that. But I think there's an opportunity to sell on your own website. And again, what would we be doing if you're launching a brand? You've got some money, clearly you've got an established business. Let's get your website e-com ready. A lot of people who have websites that are doing B2B, they're not e-com ready. Let's look at some of the best D2C brands is it babies or furniture? Yeah, baby good business. Let's look at theirs. Take some inspiration from the structure of their sites and the way they lay out their information. Let's spend a bit of money investing in our own style as well with our own branding. Let's be unique. And then set aside a budget for content creation. Again, we don't need to overcomplicate it. E-commerce isn't that complicated. Really comes down to two things. How can we get as many people to the website as possible for as cheap as possible? And once they're there, how do we convert as many of them as possible? So you've proven product market fit. People want to buy your products. Get a good website that converts. Now that'll be a process of testing and learning. Find a good web dev that has experience working with e-commerce brands and, organic and paid ads. Content for both of those. Those are your two major channels at the start. Obviously, we can build our own first-party data list, and there's a lot of other things that can go into building a successful e-commerce brand. At the start, let's just focus on those couple of things, and I'd imagine you're going to do quite well if you have an established and well-known brand. So I'd definitely be doing it. Start with those few things. Let's not overcomplicate it, and then I think you could do really well.
Yeah, another thing to add as well from a meta perspective. You look at some of the really good founders, they use a social proof in being in supermarkets and being in already in B2B, and they're using that in their meta ads because it's such a big element of social proof. So you can be using that if you are going to be running meta ads, be using that creating content around it already being in these places of trust. It'll help your meta ads and that'll do really well. Next question, Andy said, is dropshipping dead? Yes or no?
I love yes or no questions. Look, yes and no, to be honest. I think traditional dropshipping, the days where people have general stores and they're testing 20 to 30 new products a week, is that dead? I think it is, yes. I think there's probably a handful that have been doing it for 5-10 years that are still making money. Could a beginner start a store like that and be testing 20 to 30 products a week? No, you will not succeed. One, Meta doesn't like dropshippers. It's a bad customer experience for people. If your mom, your dad, your auntie, your uncle, for the first time they purchase a product from Meta, they click on a Facebook ad, they purchase it. They haven't really been much of an online shopper. They purchase it. And then they don't hear anything from the brand. They think it's a scam. It doesn't come. Finally, it arrives 3-4 weeks later. It's in shit packaging. It's all damaged. It's unbranded. The quality feels crap. Do you think they're going to be too likely to click through and buy from an ad again on Meta or tell their friends to do that? No, it's not. So it damages their business model. So we all know dropshippers, Facebook's been trying to make it very hard for them. But I do think there's some, as e-commerce has evolved, there's some other methods that aren't traditional old school dropshipping, but as there are other fulfillment methods that work, maybe you can speak to some of them.
If you watch a couple of people on YouTube, right, you're going to have two different types of people. So you're going to have those young kids that talk about dropshipping being the biggest thing. They're going to show you Shopify screenshots. And if you look closely, majority of the time, it's a massive spike and then it's a couple of months, because essentially what's happening is they're running up the brand and then they're getting problems with PayPal, their money's being held.
Ad accounts getting
flagged. And then it's not a long-term approach. Then on the other side of that, the guys that are doing really well with dropshipping, it's branded dropshipping. It's long-term, but the packaging is very simple, the products are very simple, and it's a very different approach. With the shipping, like drop shipping just being a fulfillment method, now as we've got on in the years and improved in supply chain, shipping directly from China and housing products in China and then shipping them around the world, it's no longer 2-3 weeks. It can be a couple of days in some circumstances. So that is a method that you can look in where if cash flow is an issue, you could be looking at housing your products in China. And then you're obviously going to have less lead times from the supplier to the warehouse because it is in China, domestically being shipped. And then you can start to ship out to the main countries that you're going to be selling from there. And it saves a bit with cash flow, but you're still creating a private label brand that's going to last time. So that's something that we've seen work really well, that we've been with brands that we've been mentoring. And yeah, that's would be one of my big recommendations.
It's like a good in between step as well. If it's your first business and funds are limited, I think it definitely could work. Generally, for brands that start there and do well and make money, they're going to customize more products and packaging.
Yeah,
level it up anyway. And whether they think 3PL in China still works or 3PL in Australia, US, wherever you're based, they are all options. But yeah, that's if I was going to consider it, it'd be not the old style of drop shipping, kind of this new hybrid model.
All right, we've got another one from Lisa here. She said, our business is outgrowing our warehouse. How do we decide on 3PL or getting a new warehouse?
Yeah, this comes down to personal situation, and I think it's something for everyone. The reason I think that it was good to talk on this one is because it's relevant for Lisa outgrowing it, but it's also people deciding, what do I do at the start? Do I ship it to myself and ship myself, or do I send my stock to a 3PL? And I think it comes down to a good old like pros and cons list. One, it's like the lifestyle you want is one of the factors. But then it's like run all the financial projections. A lot of people, you don't know the amount of times people have said over the years, well, we obviously have a 3PL now, particularly that handles all like international and US stuff predominantly for our retailer set up. Over the years, why don't you do a 3PL? It's so much cheaper. It's going to save you. It's not cheaper. Sometimes maybe run your numbers. Every time we did it, it wasn't cheaper. If it was cheaper and it took the work away from you, most people would do it. It's really up to you to decide, for the position that you are speaking specifically to Lisa, how long you're going to have to commit to a lease. Are you okay with doing that? I think the benefits to that, obviously, you'll have full control over stock management, stock control. You'll be able to, employ people directly. Would you rather pay your money to your employees directly and be a part of that process? Obviously, if you want to create content around that in the warehouse, a lot of warehouse-based content does really well. But if you run through your financial costings and it's kind of neither here nor there, not going to save you or cost you too much money, then you can make a decision based on your personal situation. If you're someone just starting out and it's going to cost you a little bit more, but you don't have a team and you're going to be packing orders yourself, potentially then it's going to be beneficial for you to go into a 3PL. But then you kind of don't have every content business founder, content creator's favorite thing, printing out all their orders. It's favorite because it does really well. Yeah. You can't really do that. So just pros and cons. There is no right or wrong answer. What fits in best with the lifestyle and the type of business you want to run. And if you've got a team of, warehouse staff that you've had working for you for months or years and you don't want to get rid of them, then potentially keep them on. But just look at the financials and that'll help you make your decision. And depending on how much you'd have to put down for a new lease or commit to, weigh up the risks and make a decision from there.
All right. Mel asks, best practice for keeping social media accounts as safe as possible this day and age?
As safe as possible, I'm assuming you mean from getting hacked, not like kids safe or anything. Again, like two-factor everything. I two-factor everything. Different passwords for every channel. You remember back in the day, we'd all have one email and one password we use for everything. If you do that now, it's probably just a matter of time till you get hacked and you lose access to everything. Just some common sense things. Two-factor everything. You want to use like a encrypted passwords manager, do that. Don't use the same password for everything. I two-factor everything, and I'm a little bit of I'm very annoying with all that stuff. Like if people have to message me or call me to get a code, I don't care if that's annoying. I've had identity fraud done on me once, and I don't plan on ever having it happen to me again. But yeah, I think as you're setting everything up, two-factor everything, do it from the start, because if you everything's set up and I've got to go change everything, it's a pain. Yeah, again, that'd be my only advice there.
I use Dashlane as for my passwords. I couldn't tell you. I do not know any password. I know one password, which is for my Dashlane, and that's it. Everything is what
was that password?
Random digits, and I don't know any of my passwords.
Yeah,
All right, so the next question is from Fred, and he said, please get the girls from Booby Tape and your mate George from Georgie Main on the podcast.
I swear the Booby Tape girls have been in our inbox.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure
I think we're
we've
talking
got
to maybe like their publicist or
Yep.
someone who does their PR. Yeah, we're probably we'll have them on. Again, we don't like, we're not that we don't like, we generally like to have like a certain standard of guests on. We had 2 like amazing guests on this week. The bigger the guests are, the more moving parts, the longer in advance you have to book. So there is a little bit of process to getting these guests on. These people that we had come in with like 50 million a year, entrepreneurs had to go interstate for a week. And you completely understand that. So we are talking to the Booby Tape girls. So I'd assume they'll be on in the next couple of months. I'm not sure are they from Sydney? Do you remember?
From memory, I think Melbourne, but I could be wrong.
I think, but yeah, they'll be coming at some point. Any Ecom founders or brands that you think are really cool that we could get on the podcast, send us a message, either myself on Instagram or the Life, Money and Love page, and we will reach out. Again, we only record in person. We don't do Zoom one, so they have to be able to come to Sydney. We're in Alexandria, so in between the CBD and the airport. So we'll get them on. And George, me and George have been talking about this for years. I'll get George in at one time when the time is right. It'll probably be a 3-4 out. Like we could talk all day. So I will get Georgie on. I'm not in a rush to it. We'll do it when the time's right. And that's not now. Maybe, at the end of the year, see a couple of things I want to, we'll do it soon. But yeah.
Awesome. So the last question that we've got for today is from Olivia, and she said, what's your process for selecting podcast guests, and can people apply to be on?
Yeah, so process, again, this is probably something that we can document a little bit more. We've been a little bit hectic, but again, like in terms of for me, what I'm looking for is like, number one, am I interested in like having a conversation with them about their story, or do I think they can provide good value to our guests? That's like the first and foremost thing. 2, can they come to Sydney to record the podcast? They need to be able to do that. And then, people apply all the time. So people either message the podcast page, they send us an email, their publicists send us an email. We're getting people apply for the podcast every day, and publicists reach out. So it'd actually be easy for us to book a guest every single week. Our standards for guests, obviously, as the podcast has grown, has risen. And there's certain topics that we're interested in. We think you guys are interested in listening to. And the process, like Joe will manage the inbox. Probably once a week we'll have a production meeting if we didn't already talk about it throughout the week. And yay or nay, different guest. Or if we're not sure, we'll reach out, whether it be to their publicist or to them directly. Do you have a little bit more information that you could share about the brand? Because if we just said yes to everyone, then it's not going to be a podcast that you guys want to listen to for too long. So yeah, absolutely. If you have a brand or an interesting story, it doesn't just have to be an Ecom brand, like an Ecom brand, any interesting story, whether it be in health, wellness, whatever it is outside of business, send us a message or email us. We'll get you on if you can come to Sydney. So I guess that's the process. Send us an email to team@dylanmullan.com.
I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And yeah, if it's a good fit, love to have you on.
Cool. So I think that's the end of all our questions. About an hour long, so pretty decent length. I didn't want to go for too long for this, but we should probably do these more. Ideally we do these like once a month, and I wouldn't do them in place of a guest episode. We do this as like a second episode in the week. Again, we've got a lot of plans. We'll get another full-time content creator in the next couple of months as well, and that'll be able to take a lot of work off us so we can focus on, some of those other things we spoke about. But thank you so much for listening if you made it this far. If you guys, we're going to do this more often. If you want to get your questions answered, follow me or the podcast page. So at Dylan Mullan or at Life, Money and Love. And I'll probably try to do one of these about once a month. So thanks, guys. We'll see you in the next podcast. All right, guys, thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode or you got something out of it, do yourself a favor, do me a favor, do your friends a favor and share this with them, and they can come along on this journey with us. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.